Get the f out of here. I hate glue ups. So today I'm making a new system that I believe will work way better, and this method eliminates the use for multiple clamps and call boards. Kind of. You'll see. So recently I've been working on this project that involves gluing up a lot of pallet boards, and it has proven to be a total pain in my ass. While doing this, I remembered a project idea I had years ago that I hadn't seen anywhere. It doesn't mean it hasn't been done. I'm sure it has. Everything has been. First thing I had to do was go through my pile of scrap wood and find myself some stuff that I could use for the apron. I brought them into my workshop. I had multiple 2x6s and a few boards that were a little bit wider, so I cut those boards to make them also into 2x6s so I could use them. Once I had that done, I could cut my boards to their length. I'm going to be using a 4x8 sheet for the top of this table, so I cut my boards to whatever length worked for that. I can't remember. So here's the problem. I don't have enough room to put a 4x8 tabletop anywhere in my workshop, and we have a barn in the back of our house, but this is where we throw all of our parties. So having a 4x8 table in there would also not be ideal. So with that, I decided I was going to have to make this a folding table. Hey, you might remember that guy from a past Halloween DIY video. Also works as a good light holder. Here I'm just laying down all of my aprons and lining them up on my gigantic sheet of 4x8 melamine to make sure that everything is going to line up right. So I pre-drilled all my holes for my apron, and then I could go back and screw all of my screws right in through there. With all my apron pieces screwed together, it was time to try to figure out how the hell I was going to make folding legs. I had these 4x4s over in my wood rack that have been sitting there for a long time, so I pulled them out. Brought everything into my workshop and cut my legs to 33 inches in length. Typical tabletop is 28 to 30 inches tall, but because I'm going to be working on this tabletop, I wanted my table legs to be a little bit longer. I set a positive stop on my miter. Saw so that I knew all of my table legs would be the exact same length as one another. And then I took out this piece of shit folding table that has just been sitting behind a bar in my barn for the past 2 years. I was hoping I could figure out some way to use this mechanism here to make my table legs fold. I cut these legs apart using my Sawzall. This was all just kind of trial and error. I put some washers in between the metal and this piece of 2x4 that I cut right here. That allowed that piece of 2x4 to spin inside that spot right there, if that makes sense. Then I cut a stretcher to go from leg to leg, and then screwed that piece of wood that I was using on the metal legs to the stretcher, and screwed that directly to the 4x4s. Once I had that screwed on, I could screw my metal bracket thing onto the bottom of the tabletop, and these legs can fold up now. I did the same thing to the other side, but we don't need to get into the details of that one. I had these bed frame pieces that I could use as my stretchers. This thing was definitely going to need stretchers. This little table bracket was not going to be strong enough to hold these legs steady. So I drilled holes where I could put these bed frame pieces and grabbed some bolts and bolted them right on. I can't imagine I'll be taking this table down very often, but I need to be able to take it down if we're having a party. So this isn't the most convenient folding table, but I don't think that's going to matter for me because, like I said, it won't come down very often. And then once I had my table stood up, I could go ahead and drill holes through my apron and through my legs to put these long bolts through. When I want to fold this table up, I will have to remove these bolts, which is a bit of a pain. Once that was done, I could start to mark on the top of this melamine board. By pre-drilling and screwing down in, I can recess the screws deep enough into the melamine that they're not sticking up out of the top at all. And if I came in through the bottom, I was worried that the point would come up and through the top of the melamine. And you'll see why I was worried about that in 1 minute. Once I had my apron screwed on tight from the top, I could move on to drawing out a grid on top of this melamine. I drew a grid where the points meet up roughly every 10 inches. I wasn't super precise about this, but I did make sure that all of these points were in a straight line. After that, I went back and I could drill 1-inch holes at all of the points. I drilled the hole about an 1/8 inch deep to start, and then went back afterwards and drilled my holes all the way through. This is just so I could get an accurate placing of where the holes were going to go before I climbed up on the top, as you can see right there, and drilled all the way through. Once I had my grid of 1-inch holes, I went back into my workshop and cut this 1-inch dowel into 1.5-inch pieces. Then I took my handheld belt sander and turned it on its back. Don't do this. This was so dumb. I had to thin out the dowels on one side a little bit more than the other so that they would fit down into these holes but not go all the way through. And here I am just gluing up a test piece. You can apply glue to whatever it is you're gluing, push it up against the dowels, and then, as you can see here, put dowels in on the opposite side. And then I use this old piece of 2x4 to fill in that small gap between the dowels and my piece of wood that I'm gluing up. Then I can take these wedges and shove them in between the wood I'm gluing and the support that is up against the dowels. Little tap of the hammer and this will tighten everything up. The melamine is a material that the wood glue will not stick to. So you can put this directly down on top of your melamine tabletop while the glue is drying and leave it there overnight and not worry about your piece gluing directly to the tabletop. I took another piece of a bed frame and clamped it across the top. You'd really want to go perpendicular to your glue up, but since this is just two pieces being glued together, I went parallel to the glue line. Really, I didn't even need clamps. I could have put something heavy directly down on top of this, and that would have held it flat to the table as well. And because this is a 4x8 tabletop, you can use this on anything up to, I don't know, 3.5 by 7.5, I guess. Probably even a little bigger than that. Came out the next morning, I took this piece of wood out to see how it worked, and the wood was glued up great. There was a little bit of dried glue stuck to the melamine. I just scraped that off. Then I took this bag, hung it right on the side of my table where I could keep all my dowels and my wedges. I think this might be the most useful build I've made so far. I find glue ups extremely frustrating trying to get all the clamps on and keep everything straight and tight, and with this I should be able to glue up full-size tabletops without any problems at all. Thanks so much for watching. Share this video. I think it's a really useful one for anybody who's got the space for it. Anyway, we'll see you in the next one. Later.
Bye, see you again, and have a good dream.